Alright. Hey, I'm Aqua or Aquarius of Fallen Snow if you don't know me. Welcome to this episode of my podcast, The Shit Shootin' Gallery. Happy to have you back if you've been here before. So, I've already done some content today. I did a live stream earlier, but I had some thoughts on my head that I feel like would go well into the podcast, into my series. So I thought, why not start recording another episode and see how far I can go before my throat kind of kicks, before my throat kind of like kicks the bucket again, and I completely fry the shit out of it again. But it's like a muscle, trying to work that out and get it stronger so I can make more content through the day, so I can record more, all that good stuff. But some of the ideas I've had floating around on my brain is like every time I open social media now, it really does just feel like, oh yeah, it's made to make you overthink. It's there to steal your time and attention and distract you from the shit that really matters. Sure, there's an aspect of connecting with real people and having real conversations, but it really does feel pretty one-sided. I know there's some creators that are better than others at, communicating with their audience and interacting with their followers and the people who engage with their content, but between the amount of content and how it's algorithmically pushed at you to find the things that you'll engage with or the things that upset you or make you feel certain feelings, I think we absolutely have to be aware of it and, kind of remember that every time we open these apps, even open our phone, even pick up our phone. I'm definitely trying to use social media more in the sense of connecting people, networking, building community and all that good stuff, but I don't know, between like dead internet theory and just the amount of bots and fake people or the amount of people who are caught up on superficial shit, it just makes it like not fun to interact with, in my opinion. I'm still gonna make my content and try and give back to the world with my art, with my music, with everything that I do. But it's such a paradoxical thing. I don't know. I've had the idea before, but last night it was really strong to just, yeah, pick up a backpack of a few things and just start walking and try and like walk across Canada and explore and talk to different people and really embrace that nomadic life, minimalist life of not really needing much, but trying to not only be self-sufficient but live off of trade in terms of other people's goodwill and my uh want to help and to learn. Like if I could cross Canada and stop off at places like farms or like different businesses that could use help for a while in exchange for maybe shelter or food or some money, whatever it is, I think it could be a cool, not only experiment, life experience, but then also in terms of making content, I think it could be a cool series. So that might be something I explore in the future, kind of like Terry Fox in a sense, where he was running across Canada to raise money for a specific reason. I don't know, maybe I could find a charity or something to put money to, but at the end of the day, I'm just here living my life, so it would definitely be a sense of cynicism to it, but not in the sense of like a poor outlook on life, more disregarding societal values and what society says is important, more looking towards nature and the natural order of stuff, because that's what cynicism is really about. And that's why I really like the philosopher Diogenes the dog, as he's known, because he was known for living on the street in a pot, talking shit to people, basically telling them like, hey, whatever the fuck you think is important, probably not that important, because how natural is it? How close are you to nature and the natural order of life? And I'm sure he would argue that society is kind of furthering us from that, right? And it's interesting that we even care at all about these labels and these different titles that society chooses to give us in terms of gender, sex, whatever it is, our skin color, who we think we are as people. It's it's like how much of that matters, honestly. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's a level of embracing differences and realizing that flaws are part of the story. I think people really find these labels and try to cling to them because it gives them a sense of identity or whatever it may be. It makes them feel like they have community or people that they can connect with on essentially some sort of superficial level, because you should be able to connect with everybody on a more human level. I feel like we're all made of water, we all bleed the same color. What what do we actually have? Like, we have a lot more commonalities than differences. So why are we choosing to focus on those few differences rather than the majority that we have in common? You know what I mean? And it's hard to say, like, I guess it really does just come down to ego and what we think is important in life. But I feel like the ego itself is kind of like another voice in our head, just like if you're familiar with the idea of intrusive thought, it really does just feel like a voice in your head only pumping intrusive thoughts, and you have to use your own internal voice or monologue to, kind of tell it to fuck off sometimes. Like, sometimes it's really not important or necessary, and it really can become a hindrance if it gets in the way too much, I feel like. And in the same way that, cynicists talk about, maybe pushing away not reality, sorry. Pushing away societal values and societal norms for a more natural order, maybe we should also think of that in terms of the ego and in terms of all these labels that we put on ourselves and want to be boxed in by in society. Like, it doesn't really do anything for us. It doesn't really help. I feel like. I feel like the ego is really rooted in that survival instinct and needing to survive, trying to, preserve the self, right? Because that's all it is, the idea of the self. But what does that mean? you know? I feel like it's a pretty superficial thing to need to survive in the physical, because we're eternal beings. Once we leave the physical, we just return to the eternal. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, treat life as an experience, but don't hold on to it like that's all there is. I think that too can become a huge hindrance, because then it, it, I feel like capitalism plays off these fears in the sense of people saying, oh yeah, you have to work hard and make enough so that you can retire and live a good life, whatever it is, but realistically, we should be able to live a good life all the time, no matter what, and it shouldn't matter how hard we're working. And I've been seeing a lot of good content pop up about capitalism, talking about feudalism and how, it keeps playing off these ideas of slavery and serfs and people at the bottom doing the majority of the work, getting the minimum rewards, for the person in power to get the majority of the rewards to do what they see fit with. And it's like, sure, that system could work if the person in power genuinely cares about the people working under them and tried to give back some of that majority of the resources collected, but it never ends up like that, right? And what is the natural enemy to capitalism? Communism, community. Doing things because you understand that people need it, rather than, oh, but are you putting the work in? Do you deserve whatever it is? It's like, there are people without food and water, and that's basic human necessities, right? Should everybody not have that level of respect where they have clean drinking water and enough food to get through a year to last them to the next one, or to have farms that can make that possible? But I feel like all these issues, it goes back to systems of governance, or different forms of government, and just how everything's like perceived freedom. It's not actual freedom. We don't actually have the freedom to just walk outside of our house and do whatever we want in our life. Obviously, there should be some limitations in terms of murder, sexual assault, whatever it is, obviously. But can you walk out your door and say, I don't want to go to work for a week or something, I want to go on an adventure or a vacation? And do you have the ability to do that, or is it going to fuck up your rent payments and all this, like, all this superficial shit? Do people have the ability to say, yeah, I want to take a year or two off work because of this life experience or this thing that happened that I want to focus more of my time and energy on, whether that's somebody passing away or maybe a child being born, so you want to spend more time with them while they're young, developing, whatever it is? Do we actually have the ability to do that, or is it gonna like screw over our career, whatever that is? Like, but again, these are all kind of topics that I've talked about before in my podcast and in different forms of my content, because I think this stuff is important to talk about, right? And if you want to see more about like how the universe connects and how everything's connected and comes from one source, basically, check out my past live stream that I did from earlier today, where I was adding to my Miro, which is basically a website you can put images into and map them all out. But I'm trying to use it to, I started by connecting media, and now it's getting to the point of connecting it to sacred geometry and different spiritual, religious ideas, like showing how everything's connected. So if you're more of a visual learner or someone who prefers pictures over just the audio, I would definitely suggest checking that out. And definitely check out my channel if you enjoy the stuff that I'm talking about, because this is really the path that I'm trying to go with my channel, and I hope to expand on this, on these different topics in the future, you know? And I already have more video scripts planned for different philosophies, and looking into different topics a bit more in depth. The most recent one was looking into pathocracy or pathocracy. I had someone send me how it was pronounced after I posted the video, and I guess I wasn't pronouncing it correctly, but I guess tomato kind of thing. But that's okay. That's part of life. Like embracing the flaws, as I was talking about in the most recent short form video that I posted to my TikTok, Instagram, and to my YouTube Shorts, if you want to check that out. And it relates pretty well to the video I posted right before that about cutting my hair, because it's kind of looking at the difference between, you know, when is something broken and fixable and you can kind of fix it and add the flaw to the story, and when is it better to kind of start over, like the season changing, when you clean up the dead leaves and give space for new growth. I think it's all part of the same story, obviously, but there should be a level of understanding when is something more minor that can be fixed and you keep going, or when is something more major and, you know, you tried to either fix something or you tried to adapt it, but it's not really working, so can you start over or bring it back to a place of being able to grow more and expand in a different way, maybe, you know? I don't know, it's interesting. Like, the longer I do this podcast, the more I'm kind of realizing, like, oh yeah, I'm just talking about the same thing in different forms, talking about the same thing at different times, in different shapes, different places, but it's all the same base. And I feel like once you see that, everything becomes a lot, like, simpler. It's a lot, I don't know, in a sense I can kind of understand if people think the things that I look into, in a sense, kind of ruin the game of life or reality, in a sense, because part of reality is kind of forgetting that you are it. And I feel like when we remember that, it kind of like, I don't know if it devalues this experience a little bit, but it's kind of like, uh, I don't know. It makes the superficial stuff not really as fun or as like engaging, I feel like, because you realize that it's all like distracting from the realizations. But then when you have the realizations, like all I want to do is meditate and, literally become closer with nature and with myself. I don't really need the societal stuff because it's all meant to distract even more from life, which is already a distraction from the fact that we are all one and the same. So it's kind of interesting breaking it down to a meta level of distractions and what is truth, what is reality, what is consciousness, all this stuff. But again, this is the life that I chose for myself and the things that I have found myself being the most interested in because that's real. It's not superficial. It's not just talking about video games or it's not just talking about politics and how stuff never fucking changes with that. Like, I don't know. It makes me look at life in a sense of like I'm laughing at it. It's like, why are people so distracted with shit? But then that's the whole point of life really is to just be distracted and to get lost in whatever hobby or little niche you have, because that's really like an aspect of us being God, right? Being able to create, being able to have the ideas and bring them to reality, just like we were in a sense created that way, or we came to become living beings through the vast chaos of the universe. But we're here now, we're experiencing whatever it is that happens, so can we kind of get to a level of understanding what that is, right? And it feels so weird having this information at a young age. Like, I just turned 23 last month. It's only March. And it is kind of like reality breaking because I, I don't really care about money or working a job or partying or doing all this shit. I've been through so much life already through my own lived experiences that I really do just want to get to meditating and to like becoming a monk, honestly. But maybe that's a goal for the future. I still want to do I still want to live a little bit of a nomadic life for a little bit and find some native indigenous cultures that I can interact with and see if I can gain some knowledge from them and try and pass on their teachings in what I'm talking about. Because I feel like that's an aspect that I don't have too much knowledge on because there isn't too much information. We have a lot of information from the Western and Eastern cultures, but not too much of the native cultures that were here before the colonized cultures, you know what I mean? And I'd really like to interact with them in terms of learning more about nature, about, their teachings, where we came from before all of this shit that we know, right? And I would like to try and find some, up here we have like Mennonites or like Amish people who live without technology or electricity. I would love to get some of their knowledge and teachings. And then, if I can make content from all of that, kind of build up somewhat of a career, then maybe look to a more monk lifestyle because they talk about, you have to have something to leave behind to go to that lifestyle, because if not, then I guess you wouldn't really see as much of the benefits if you didn't have something to leave behind, a life of superficial static to step away from and to feel that clarity more. I'm not 100% sure, but I have heard that before where individuals might get turned away from the temples or the monks or from becoming a monk because they haven't necessarily lived enough life yet. But that's all different ideas for different practices, different teachings. Like, I feel like you can still implement the ideas of meditation and yoga, stretches, whatever it is, with your everyday life. But then, yeah, I can also understand the idea of like, yeah, you kind of have to leave the old behind to transform into the new, like the seasons changing, or like a wildfire burning through a forest and only leaving the trees, but getting rid of that like dead growth and all the stuff that's kind of choking out the forest from receiving more light and oxygen kind of thing. But that's the cyclical nature of life, right? That's why we have lightning strikes that do start fires, and then the fires can spread, but from those fires, what rises? More nature, like, because life feeds death and death feeds life, and it's a cyclical cycle. It's cyclical. And yeah, once we remember that, I feel like it makes life a lot easier to laugh about and to try and step back and not take everything so seriously, like this three-dimensional superficial shit is all we have, because it's really not, right? I have a bar in one of my songs talking about how I never truly felt alive until I slit my wrist and looked inside, because I feel like there is a level of that. Maybe that's what it's for, that survival instinct, the ego, like we were talking about. I feel like it is a bit of that, remembering like, oh yeah, we're trapped in this physical body, we still have senses, we still feel pain. It kind of brings us back down to earth in a sense. And I feel like that can help when we get a little bit too lost in the mental stuff. In the conceptual, right? Obviously, I'm talking from a point of, this is more what I look into. This is a lot of what I look into, so I'm in the conceptual quite often, and that's why I need to remember to practice, recentering and focusing in the present. But I feel like there are a lot of people who don't really have a lot going upstairs, for lack of a better way to say it, or the shit that they are focusing on is so superficial, and it doesn't really matter that. I don't know. It's a bit of hypocrisy and irony coming from me, because I do a lot of thinking. But maybe people should try thinking more and stepping into the conceptual to remember why it's so important to come back to focusing in the present, in the physical, and realizing that it is all here now. There isn't even a past or future, because it's all the same thing. And that's kind of what I was talking about in the last episode of the podcast, that talking about how, I had somebody recently that I was talking to saying how they stepped outside of space and they felt non-linear time, but they were also going on about the fact that time and space are inherently connected. So how can you step outside of one without the other? And if you could truly step outside of both, what would that look or feel like? And I feel like it's a lot of conceptual stuff that it doesn't really necessarily have. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say here. I feel like it's interesting concepts to look into and to kind of mess around with the conceptual world, but it's not necessarily like, how can anybody be right all the time? A broken clock is right twice a day, but I think focusing on being right, or focusing on what we know instead of what we don't know, and how much we don't know, because there's a lot of shit we don't know. And just, kind of embracing that unknowing, kind of embracing the fact that we don't know everything, and that there are going to be people in the world that can teach us something, no matter who it is, no matter how old they are. And I feel like we really need to keep an open mind and open perspective, and truly put ourselves in other people's shoes to kind of get that in our life, to get more of a sense of that in our life. But, what do I know? I'm just living my life from my perspective, and then people are going to see my physical body and how I dress, what I look like, and make their own assumptions. But, to each their own. That's life, right? I just laugh about it because I'm just living my life. I don't even at the end of the day, I don't even know if I will be on the internet forever. Obviously, I won't be living forever, so what do I want to do with my time and my life, and I guess what kind of legacy am I going to leave behind? And I'd rather continue conversations of importance and of value rather than, superficial shit. But then I guess at the end of the day, it's all superficial shit because it's not just sitting around meditating 24/7, And again, who's to say if there is a right or a wrong, because it's just perspective, perceptions, hills and valleys, perceived goods and bads, but what does that even mean, But yeah, I'm looking down, I'm seeing about half an hour on the recording, and I might do some editing to cut out some coughing and some dead space. But other than that, I think I'll leave this episode here for now. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. It not only helps the channel with the growth, but then you can become part of the community, join these conversations. If you hit the little bell icon, then you get notified every time I upload a new video, and that would help out a ton. It only takes 2 seconds and it helps the channel out a ton, so I'd really appreciate it. But that being said, I'll leave it here for now. Like I say in all of my videos, I love you, stay safe, good luck, and take it easy.